I'm Jay Ackridge. I met most of you last evening. I'm the Provost and Chief Diversity Officer here at Purdue University, and glad to be with you again at lunch today. I've heard great things about this morning. I know some groups were late arriving for lunch because you were deeply engaged in conversation. I think that's exactly what we want at a program like this. So again, I hope you've had a good morning and have set up the rest of the day and are looking forward to an excellent tomorrow session as well. Before I introduce our luncheon speaker, I would like to introduce our State Representative Sally Siegrist for a special presentation. Representative Siegrist serves on the Indiana House Agricultural and Rural Development Committee, and her district includes West Lafayette and Purdue University, and she's got a presentation on behalf of the elected officials in this area. And I'd like to ask Dr. Suresh Garamella, our Executive Vice President for Research and Partnerships, to join me on stage.
Thank you so much, Provost Ackridge, and thank you to all of you. It is a great honor to be here with you, and it is my privilege and an honor to be the representative for Purdue University at the Indiana Legislature. I can't think of a better way for Purdue to begin celebrating its year-long 150th anniversary than by bringing together more than 200 individuals and organizations, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Bank, and the USAID to combine all this unique expertise in order to impact the lives of millions. Our world is growing at an almost unimaginable rate, over 7.7 billion mouths to feed, and sadly, nearly 800 million of those people go to bed hungry every night. It is up to us to scale up our current technologies to help achieve food security for all. Purdue has made significant strides to facilitate these types of innovations. It's a leader in agricultural research, and Purdue University has used its vast network of resources to implement USAID-funded projects on a larger scale. For example, the Purdue Improved Crop Storage Program has led to a significant reduction in post-harvest crop losses, particularly in areas of Africa. Scaled-up agricultural technologies can be game changers to food insecure countries, and that makes the work done here by all of you even more critical. I'm honored to present Purdue University with this proclamation from the Indiana House of Representatives and my colleagues who represent parts of Tippecanoe County, congratulating them on their work toward reducing food insecurity around the world. Whereas the Scale Up Conference is to be held at Purdue University from September 25th to 27th, 2018, whereas this will be the first major conference in Purdue's 150th anniversary celebration year, whereas the Scale Up Conference is a high-level event that will bring together 200 to 300 individuals and organizations engaged in the introduction, diffusion, and adoption of agricultural innovations that have the potential to reach millions, whereas researchers, implementing organizations, the business community, governments, policymakers, and the donor community will come together to discuss best practices for scaling up agricultural technologies. Whereas the Scale Up Conference was organized in partnership with the African Development Bank, an organization focused on spurring sustainable economic growth and social progress in its regional member countries. Whereas featured speakers are from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Bank, and the USAID, whereas the conference keynote speaker, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, is president of the African Development Bank Group, 2017 World Food Prize laureate, and an alumnus of Purdue, and whereas Purdue University's Scale Up Conference is vital in successfully scaling up innovations for addressing the need to feed the world's population, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the General Assembly of the State of Indiana that the Indiana House of Representatives wishes to express their congratulations to Purdue University and the 2018 Scale Up Conference.
Carolyn, Suzanne, this wouldn't have happened without you. Can you come up, please?
Thank you for all you did.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we need a picture with all of them. Here we are. Jake's going to take a picture. Thank you.
Thanks much, Sally, for being here. I know you've got a very demanding schedule right now, and we certainly appreciate your support, and that's the support of other fellow legislators of the things we're trying to accomplish here. So thank you again for being here. Let's give Sally another round of applause. So I've got one quick announcement before I introduce our luncheon speaker, and those that are involved in Session 3, Part 1, the session on markets, are asked to be backstage over in Loeb at 1:15. And I assume you know who you are. If, again, need to be over there at 1:15. Session 3, Part 1, the session on markets by 1:15. So it is a personal privilege for me to introduce our luncheon speaker, Dr. Simeon Uy. He's already familiar to you because he was mentioned by both Dr. Adeshina and Dr. Bertram in their remarks yesterday afternoon and last evening. He was named director of the World Bank's Food and Agriculture Global Practice in September of 2017, and in that role he oversees the strategic direction and delivery of the Agriculture Global Practice Work Program with a focus on Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. He spends a lot of time on an airplane. Since joining the World Bank in 2003, Dr. Uy has held several assignments, including manager of the Food and Agriculture Global Practice for Africa and for South Asia. And before joining the World Bank, Dr. Uy worked for 15 years in the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, and he managed multicultural agricultural research programs in Africa and Asia for both the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture and the International Livestock Research Institute. He holds a PhD in agricultural economics from Purdue and is an honorary fellow of the African Agricultural Economics Association, and he was named a distinguished agriculture alumnus from Purdue University. We're also delighted that his wife, Dr. Mamu Kuyate Uy, is senior advisor to the executive director for Sub-Saharan Africa with the World Bank, is with us, and she too earned her graduate degrees from Purdue and is also a Purdue Distinguished Agricultural Alumnus. Mamu, we're glad that you're with us today as well. So on a personal note, Simeon is also a classmate of mine, and so we actually started in the fall of 1982 together. I think some of Akeen's memories of our time together were a bit distorted, but this story is true. And we were having a big exam coming up on a Monday, and it was the weekend, and a group of my fellow classmates and I went down the hill, as some of you might have done last night, for an adult beverage, and we're coming back on a Saturday night up the hill, and the only light on in the Krannert building was in Simeon's office. And we were all wondering, Guy, give us a break, for gosh sakes, take one night off. But that wasn't Simeon, so it was a privilege to be in the same class with him. We also shared major professor, and we're just delighted to have Simeon Uy back to address us here at lunch today. So Simeon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jace, for this generous introduction. I could not really not come to Purdue, West Lafayette, on this particular occasion, because coming here really rejuvenates me, and also brings a lot of memories, and very good memory, because one thing that we will cherish together, my wife and I, is that we actually got married here. So, and let me tell you one thing. The office where my wife works is a busy one, and to get leave is sometimes much more difficult than myself. So every time I have like an opportunity to go somewhere and I say, let's go together, she said, no, I need to save some leave days for Christmas and so on. This time I said, well, I'm going to Purdue. And she said, I'm coming. It was easier to convince her to come to Purdue than convincing her to go to Dubai or the places like that. Just to tell you how much we are attached to this university and also the town. Let me also thank sincerely Purdue University and the African Development Bank for organizing this great conference, and Suzanne, Caroline, and Jay, and everybody who has been involved in there. You guys have done a great job. We're really, enjoying it. Today, I want to talk about a particular topic, from thousands to millions, and basically, give a little bit of a flavor of how at the World Bank we are scaling up innovations in agriculture. But before I do that, and I know many of you know about the World Bank, and you probably, some also may not know, what it does. But I thought I should actually, give a little bit of background about this particular organization. Clearly, it's not the commercial bank, where you can get a loan or a mortgage, or where you can deposit, savings. I remember the case of a colleague of mine who is a manager, and she said her mother asked, the friend of her mother asked him where she was working. And she told them at the World Bank. So the mother said, oh, my daughter works for the World Bank, but I know she's not a teller. So sometimes people can confuse the World Bank with a commercial bank. The World Bank actually provides financial and technical assistance to developing governments, to help them achieve their development goals. So the goal of the World Bank is not to maximize profit, like the commercial banks, but to maximize development, impact. Okay. More specifically, the World Bank sets two goals: to end extreme poverty by reaching a 3% poverty, rate globally, and also promote shared prosperity for the bottom 40%, of every country in the world. So to help achieve these goals, the World Bank provides grants and low-interest loans for investment in, among other things, like infrastructure, health, education, and agriculture and rural development. In addition, the World Bank offers support to developing countries through policy advice, research and analysis, technical assistance, and our analytical work underpins our financing and helps inform developing countries' own investment. The question is, how does the World Bank get its financing from to support developing countries? So we don't have depositors like regular commercial banks. Our financing comes from three main sources. The main source is from selling bonds to investors in the world of financial markets. The World Bank has a AAA credit rating, so the interest rate the bank pays these bonds is relatively low. The second source is the contribution from member countries, donor member countries. And the third one is the repayment from previous loans to developing countries. The bank, as we call it in Washington, is governed by a representative of both developed and developing countries, ensuring that their voice in the goals and the strategic directions, financing, and policies of decisions are heard. And that's where my wife works, in the area where they do the policies. In this context, scaling up development impact is extremely relevant and important to us. The question we ask ourselves is, what does actually, scale up, basically mean? Scaling up means expanding, adapting, and sustaining successful policies, programs, and projects in different places and over time to reach a greater number of people. It also means piloting new and innovative approaches, learning, and adjustment that reflects the local context that are the building blocks for scaling up. For the agriculture global practice, which I help to lead, we are scaling up approaches to tackle the challenges of today's food system. Now, I would like to give you 3 examples of scaling up. The first example is the generation, dissemination, and adoption of improved seeds across West Africa through a program that we call the West Africa Agricultural Productivity Program. Now, for those who know very well that particular part of the world, which is on the map there, the relatively small size of African countries prevents them from capturing economies of scale in agricultural research in developing improved crop varieties. In addition, the flow of existing on-the-shelf varieties across countries is very low. So both of these constraints add to the challenge of raising the low level of ag productivity in West Africa. So this program, which we call the WAP, W-A-P, West Africa Agricultural Productivity Program, helps to address these constraints by developing national centers of specialization focused on research on particular commodities to capture scale economies. It also facilitates the movement of crop varieties across borders in West Africa through improved information and harmonized seed regulations. The WAP started in 3 countries initially. In West Africa, focusing on establishing the national centers of specialization for roots and tuber in Ghana, for rice in Mali, and dry cereals in Senegal. Based on the experience of this initial phase, a second phase expanded the program to establish centers of specialization for fruits and vegetables in Burkina Faso, plantain in Cote d'Ivoire, and aquaculture in Nigeria. And again, building on these experiences of the first 2 phases, the third phase expanded to the program in Benin, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea, Liberia, Niger, Sierra Leone, and Togo, further focusing on livestock, mangrove rice, and maize. Today, 13 countries, are included in the program with a total funding of almost $500 million. The WAP has generated 9 million, has benefited about 9 million beneficiaries on about 4.8 million hectares with about 200 improved technologies adopted. Average incomes have increased over 30%, and over 1,000 young scientists were awarded scholarships for master's and PhD degrees. The World Bank is currently preparing a follow-on operation to support the development of value chain and market linkages and support greater adoptions in improved technologies. And this is the one that we'll be partnering with African Development Bank, TAT program, the Technology for African Agriculture Transformation. The second example that I would like to give is linking farmers to markets through productive alliances. A key challenge, and it was mentioned yesterday in one of the 3 tripods that Akin Adesina mentioned, a key challenge for poverty reduction and shared prosperity is how to better link farmers to markets to improve their opportunities to earn income. One approach to address this challenge has been to promote productive alliances that strengthen the linkages between producers, buyers, and the public sector within the agricultural value chain. The Productive Alliances approach formalized agreement between farmer groups and buyers for the provision of certain goods in a specified quantity and quality. So a productive alliance involves 3 agents, a group of smallholder producers, 1 or more buyers, and the public sector. These agents are connected through a business plan which describes the capital and services needs of the producers and proposes improvements that will allow them to upgrade their production capacities and skills and strengthen their links with the buyers. These improvements are met through technical assistance, like, for example, delivery of extension services, business development through strengthening producers' capacities in management and accounting, and productive investment, like through provision of machinery, infrastructure, or input in the form of matching grants. The approach was initially tested in a World Bank program in just 1 country, Colombia. And then after close and continuing evaluation, the approach was expanded and adapted in other countries. Since then, the World Bank has scaled up the Productive Alliance approach in Latin America and provided more than $1 billion financing to support 21 projects in 10 countries: Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, and Peru. And today, learning from these experiences, this approach is now being scaled up in Asia and Africa. Productive alliances have benefited families in Mali, Papua New Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Vietnam. The third example, and the last one, is about raising agricultural productivity, improving resilience, and reducing greenhouse gas emission through climate-smart agriculture. You all know that today droughts, floods, rising temperatures are already cutting crop yield and dampening the prospect for future growth, agricultural productivity growth. And agriculture and land use change contribute about 1/4 of global green gas emission. So to be able to address the issue of climate change, agriculture has to be part of the solution. A more climate-smart food system that improves agricultural productivity and then has greater resilience to climate change and lowers greenhouse gas emissions is urgently needed. The World Bank has been scaling up support for climate-smart agriculture in 3 ways. First of all, through supporting a broader coalition for broad-scale action. The World Bank was a founding member of the Global Alliance on Climate-Smart Agriculture. The second way is through partnership. So the World Bank has been working with the CGIAR to develop climate-smart profiles that provide a visual overview of the degree of climate smartness of the most important production systems in a country, identifying good practices and potential for improvement. In addition, we are supporting several countries to prepare climate-smart investment plan. The third way is through operational support. In all the World Bank projects, all the World Bank projects are screened for climate risk and account for the greenhouse gas impact. In addition, all projects are reviewed for opportunities to incorporate climate-smart actions. In the fiscal year that just ended last June, we calculated that 45% of our agricultural lending had climate adaptation and mitigation co-benefits. We are continuing to develop and mainstreaming, and mainstream metrics and indicators to measure outcomes. Now, from those 3 examples, one might ask basically, what are the key aspects basically across all the examples, for scaling up? 3 ideas or 4. First of all, we need to have a better understanding of opportunities and undertake systematic screening during project design to reflect these opportunities in the climate, as we did in the case of climate-smart agriculture. The second way is through phasing, like in the case of West Africa Agricultural Productivity Program, that both include more countries and also more agricultural products. The third way is learning lessons and adaptation, as in the case of Productive Alliance Program. And finally, the partnership, as in all cases, particularly with the CGIAR and private sector, actors. What does this mean now for institutions like Purdue? How can we work together to scale up innovations? I have about 3 ideas, which already Purdue is doing, but I would like to reemphasize them. Capacity strengthening, number 1, can help to facilitate the scaling up. Academic institutions like Purdue, with strong agricultural faculties, can contribute to building the capacity among students who will soon graduate to become practitioners in the agriculture or the development sector. It can happen. Akin Adesina graduated from Purdue and now heads the African Development Bank. I graduated from here, and I'm now the Director of Agriculture at the World Bank, overseeing a portfolio of several $billion. There are many other examples. The second area is the curriculum development that can help to arm future practitioners with the skills and knowledge they need to be able to scale up innovations that can transform the agriculture sector. Students should be trained to think about scalability in operations, recognize design elements of projects that can be replicated, and learn how to adapt them in different contexts, and how to conduct impact evaluation to assess operations and project for scalability potential. US universities like Purdue can explore partnership with African universities to build capacity, train practitioners, and on how to scale up innovations projects and equip them with the skills that they need to be able to support the expansion, adaptation, and continuation of transformational policies, programs, and projects. I'm pleased to say that today, the World Bank is developing a major program on agriculture education, and Purdue has been part of the conceptualization of the ideas. We call it SHARE, Strengthening Higher Agricultural Education in Africa. Let me end by sharing these little pictures with you. On your left, you could see your humble speaker receiving his PhD degree from Purdue. The picture in the middle there, if some of you have very good memories, you recognize Secretary Earl Butz, former Secretary of Agriculture, when he would be going and giving speeches in different states, and he will choose 1 or 2 graduate students to accompany them. In this case, I was part of his group on the left there with white trousers. And in the picture downstairs, this is a quiz for you. I like to know if you recognize somebody there, sitting. I mean, you could recognize me possibly for the picture in the middle with a dark T-shirt. But on the picture on the left to the right, who do you see? And in the middle picture, the gentleman sitting and looking at on the left side. That's Jay Ackridge. These were the graduate years that he was mentioning. I love those pictures. I like to take pictures, and every time, once in a while, I look at them, and they bring memories. This is what I wanted to share with you, and I want to thank you for your attention. Yeah. Yes. Couple questions.
My name is Joe Dever from USAID. When I was in West Africa, I heard a little bit about the WAP project. But could you just comment on how it seems to have selected just 1 or 2 crops for each country, and how is that accurate, or how is it that it's just focusing on 1 or 2 crops, and how does that impact regional scaling, since so many crops are regionally produced and traded. Can you talk a little bit, very briefly, about the selection of crops, and is that focus an impediment to scaling in some ways?
Yeah. Do I take a few questions, or you want me to answer one by one? What is the best way? Yeah. One by one. Okay. Yeah. Oh, we got time. Yeah. Thank you very much. Again, it's all part of how you scale up. It is when you start a project like that in the World Bank, a lot of questions being raised is, are you making your project too complex? Are you embracing too many crops at the same time? Is your project going to be successful? So we have to go through a selection process to identify, what is the crop that if we work on will make a particular difference. And we know that many countries actually produce and trade about the same commodities. But some countries have competitive advantage in one compared to the other one. And so basically, we sort of work with the client, the partners, and go through an exercise of priority setting. So the country themselves basically, get together and say, well, in Senegal, we think that we can focus on dry cereal, and Mali being, for example, a major rice producer, will focus on rice, and so on, even though we know that rice is being produced in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and so on. So it's a process of selection, process and discussions among the countries. And then the centers of specialization is set up in a way that a lot of the resources will focus on that particular, commodity, and to ensure that, they benefit from the research on that, rather than spreading all their resources across a range of commodities in particular country. So but it doesn't mean that the good thing about the project is that even though Senegal, let's say, is focusing on dry cereal, they do have exchange program on rice with Mali. And Nigeria focusing on aquaculture does work with the, let's say, Ivory Coast on plantain. So that is what this project is doing, bringing scientists and researchers together to learn from each other and so on. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm Joe Breeze from Agra, and it's also in relation to the West Africa Agricultural Productivity Program. Do you see ways to make that a more demand-driven supply system, which would also ensure the quality that the seed of seed that farmers are receiving is ensured? Because of course, that is the big challenge in scaling seed supply, is maintenance of quality of seed. And also, if there's opportunity to make sure that the private sector is the one really that can grow through this program.
Yeah, no, very good question. In fact, in the second phase the new project that we are now working on, we are bringing in a particular, emphasis and focus on partnering with the private sector, because effectively for seeds like that, it's almost impossible to work on it without the involvement of the private sector. So deliberate effort is being made, to have actually a partnership with private sector through, for example, making grant, funding, available, to discuss. So, for example, we've been discussing with, Syngenta, for example, on seed development. And so, on your first question on the demand side, that is basically what's driving, the development of the particular operation. It takes a long time to prepare it. It takes like over 2 years, just because we want to ensure that those who are going to receive this money are actually in the driving seat. And then we don't do it too quickly. And that is one of the criteria for approving the project. And we need to have clear evidence that the countries that are going to receive this particular loan actually want it. Because after all, it's money they're going to pay back in some ways or another. Thank you.
Well, Thanks so much, Simeon. We do need to close this part of our program. Hopefully you can catch Simeon with other questions you might have. And thank you for that excellent set of remarks, Simeon. Really appreciate you contributing to the discussion, except for that last slide. So anyway, Suresh asked me what happened. I think 40 years happened. But I was thinking about that. I mean, that slide, there was an American person from Ivory Coast, Brazil, and Taiwan in there at least. I don't know if there was somebody else. And that could have been any one of our graduate school experiences, no matter where you were across, I think, the country and or internationally. And, you know, those relationships, I think, we form with people from other places and other cultures ultimately come awfully important when we're taking on a problem like this and we're connecting with those professionals later in our lives. So thanks for sharing it, Simeon. So again, we got to kick off our afternoon session at 1:30 back in Loeb. So please head that direction, and we wish you a very productive afternoon.